Hey, the sad truth about the human condition is that not only are we a slave to the memetics described in my theory, HSD, human domestication syndromes, but we're certainly more and more slaves to our genetics. There's a guy I met about a week ago, and man, there's so many win-win scenarios we could create between us with what are the needs of, me fixing this place up and his business and his family situation, and unfortunately guided by the genetics. The blood's going down a little too much, and that's the priorities that he's making, always pushing the other things that he knows are important with my skill sets and his needs. And, man, like if I wonder if there's a support group on Vancouver Island. It'd be a Jane, a Brandy, a Maravik, about people that knew me a long time, and they, oh man, and they were like the victims of their biological clocks. It's like, oh man, we had Martin in our life, and exactly what he said happened, and he was saying be careful with this, and we did it anyways, and he had skill sets we could use right now, and support group of people like that. I explained before that why I don't have kids is that it took me a long time thinking I wouldn't be a good dad, and finally when I knew I'd be a good dad, and it was with a girlfriend called Christina, I realized I'd be a good dad. And I also, after I closed my driving school, worked a lot more with kids, and the results I had were better than the women in that industry, and even the men in that industry sometimes wouldn't give another man a chance because they know how hard it is to get in, but they don't. They just want it to be the dominant man in there. It's pretty sad about how your species is screwed up. So by the time I realized I'd be a good dad because, I succeeded in not getting a woman pregnant at a young age, I think you can win a Nobel Prize for that now. And it's not that my hormones were not strong and are not still strong. It's just, there's other forms of skill sets I've developed other than the ones related to what comes naturally with genetics. It's not hard to make a baby. What's hard is to raise a human child, and I have yet to meet somebody who is capable of raising a human child. My theory does explain that from about 10,000 years ago, when, let's say, the first phase of certain types of human domestication syndrome started, because they were linked to, let's say, agriculture, is it's about in the 1960s. My theory says that multiple phases accelerated to the point that we had lost the ability to undergo our own maturation process, to access the higher functions of our brains as a species, and that the last human child was born not without human DNA, but also with DNA that, if we could measure these things, if we were advanced enough in that science, we could tell it's a DNA that's in a devolutionary state, but that would undergo its own maturation process because that baby in the 60s would have been born in a human culture where, the village was capable of collective learning, for example, was capable of, role modeling the right things, teaching the right things in the right way, in the right order, about the right things, to develop a human operating system was no longer possible. So my theory realizes this. So, the conversations I could have with people that have so many followers. They say, oh, Martin, if only you knew. Yo, you don't know. Oh, you don't know how bad things are. And it's like, oh my God, dude. Do you say what I say? That all social tipping points for our species to self-correct were passed before I was born? Do you say this? Then you don't know how bad things are. It's ridiculous. Another thing that's ridiculous is when I closed my driving school, there's many reasons. Again, I've never said all the reasons because nobody cares to ask. I've mentioned a few here and there in my past vlogs. And my vlogs were way over 1,000 already when I started bringing it down. And I'm like 300 now, and it's going to keep going down. As I load more that I post public, but some I load, I just won't post them until years later. there's a lot of interesting data about you, the human condition, and about how my theory is not an hypothesis. It's a theory, and it's pretty much a fact. At least to an Homo sapien, it is. So, in these videos, it explains a lot of things, and hopefully in the future there'll be an audience to my YouTube channel. There'll be a desire to watch that stuff, and maybe not. But the thing is even if there isn't, I didn't waste my life. I was part of the solution. So what I was saying about closing my driving school is I was giving, free gift certificates for certain things like Filipino Christmas parties. I was giving discounts because students wanted to use my car for the road test more and more in the later years when I knew they weren't ready. And I say, well, how come you're not doing more lessons? And they stated income. And really, I think it's true. But, when I started giving discounts, they didn't necessarily want to take more lessons. They were less and less wanting to be good at driving. And it's not just there. It's like it was a species-wide issue that was accelerating even during the time of my driving school. So one of the reasons I closed it, I had to focus on not saving the world with the driving school, for one thing. So, as I was giving more discounts and not raising my prices that much, but not lowering the quality, right, is people just didn't care. So there was a devolution, in a way, about the concept of education when it comes to keeping yourself safe on the road and others. So, for example, here's what you don't get, and it's really ridiculous because you think there's something wrong with me. You think that this proves me a fraud when it proves you a fraud, is when I offer free tutoring, and I do all the time. Like I say, I'll help you and just, give me a reference or sometimes I say, let me videotape our sessions, and I could use that as a reference online because it's for freaking record instead of working in a place a long time. But in tutoring, there's more and more now organizations that don't, they're not the mob, but somehow they have mob properties. It could be like a bunch of retired teachers. And if they worked as teachers all their careers and they're retired, believe me, they're probably not that good as tutors because the system isn't broken because, they quit and they said, I'm not working here. If they were retired, they had an entire career, they were part of the problem. And if they can't explain to me the difference between teaching in a classroom, certain subjects, part of a controlled curriculum, and tutoring, which they probably can't, then I know they're not as good as I am. But for some reason, I can't even give them pointers, or I can't even volunteer in that community because they somehow dominate the market like, the Hells Angels or something. It's weird. So if I want to offer free tutoring, you would think, well, he's not that good, or he's so rusty, he's not ready to charge money. Well, you know what? I can easily prove that wrong if you let me record it. But you know what it is about free tutoring that you don't get? When I call myself a learning specialist, which incorporates boosting the concept of collective learning, which our species has fallen so far behind to modernity that, we can't catch up anymore, but I still want to be part of the solution, is a tutor that tutors for free is learning about himself, somebody else, a subject, and then it continues. For example, how we experience this subject and how, let's say, we interacted, because me and the student would suddenly have somebody pass by or over here and say they're excited and they say, oh, what are you doing? Like, what's happening here? And we'd boost this concept. So what I get out of it is learning. I'm a lifelong learner. A learning specialist role models the concept of learning, collective learning, being a lifelong learner, the joy of learning, curiosity, unblocking, involving others. You don't get that. You don't get that I get something out of free tutoring. You think I'm a fraud for offering it. And then you hate me from having multiple skill sets, from having a systems thinking mind that can link all these different concepts in either culture or the physical sciences together and understand them. And that when I learn things, it gets easier and easier, and I grasp it faster and faster. And you think I was born smart or something like that? No, I did the work. And that doesn't mean it was paid work. For example, free tutoring gives me this type of intelligence, and you avoid it, and you don't realize that you're missing this type of intelligence. Anyways, getting back to the point, I'm a little bit frustrated with this human condition. So by the time I realized that I would be a good dad, I just couldn't find a mom I agreed with, that was either without kids or with kids that I agreed with how they raise their kids. So that means I pretty much saw and dated and wanted to get out of relationships with moms sometimes just because freaking I might have, if she was single without kids, I might have stayed with her, but just the way she was bad at a mom just freaking threw me off. I can't be with it. It's like too much work. And I can't just date part-time and have the kids lose me and we don't form a family unit. We have to form a family unit. But when I don't trust the mom to look at herself in the mirror and to become a better mom, I lose the ability to connect with these kids. Just like when I work with kids and I find my supervisors want me to represent them as a union steward, and you get more proof than that when they see I'm good with the kids better than they are. With kids they've known a super long time, within days I'm better than them. And they're so child-centered that what they want is not for me to let's go do professional training with their company or organization, is they want me to be their union representative. They're child-centered. If only I took ECE and I was as good as them.